We need to get real about something. Shopping is not fun, especially clothes shopping. I hate going into a dressing room with 1,000,001 things hanging over my arm to try on. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's so annoying having to get in and out of all of these different items just to try them on. The mirror, that's a whole nother story. They're awful. And I end up, and I know you do too, liking nothing. Something's gotta give, and this is where Stitch Fix comes in. Stitch Fix makes clothes shopping so much easier. You get a personal stylist that sends you pieces that match your size, style, and everything's in your budget. No guesswork, no stress. Here's how it works. You take a quick style quiz, you share your size, your style and budget, and you get matched with a real human stylist who catches your vibe. It's no risk, all style. Get a personalized Fix box straight to your door and try it all on in the comfort of your home. Shipping and returns are always free, and there's no subscription required. Plus, get a free try-on for your first fix. Get started today at stitchfix.com/podcast to get $20 off your first order, and they'll waive your styling fee. That's stitchfix.com/podcast.
Hi, I'm Cassidy.
And I'm Amanda.
And we're the hosts of Drinking the Kool-Aid, a comedy podcast dedicated to the mysterious.
Tune in every week while we cover two chilling tales about everything from cults
to aliens
to the paranormal,
all with a sense of humor.
So grab a drink
and tune in to Drinking the Kool-Aid wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the Murder Diaries. I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalie.
Make sure if you want to listen ad-free, you head over to patreon.com/murderdiariespod. And you can also catch us on YouTube now. In March of 1998, 23-year-old Stacey Colbert was just starting her life. She'd graduated with a degree in marketing from The Ohio State University and moved into her own apartment and adopted a kitten. She was 6 months into a job she loved and seemed to be thriving. So when her older sister found out that she'd missed several days of work and no one could contact her, she knew something was terribly wrong. Stacey had disappeared, and it would be 6 long years before her remains were located. Unfortunately, finding those remains didn't bring any answers with them, and Stacey's disappearance, termed homicide, was growing cold. This is her story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
Stacey Beth Colbert was born on February 3rd, 1975, to Larry and Ronna Colbert in Chicago, Illinois. She was the second daughter born to the couple, joining her big sister Danielle, who was just 2.5 years older. Not long after her birth, the Colberts relocated to a small town of Charleston in east central Illinois. Larry worked as a podiatrist, and Ronna was a middle school teacher. Danielle told NBC News of Charleston, "It's a very small town. You went to the park, you went to the movies, you went to the mall. There really wasn't a lot of things outside of that." Danielle and Stacey were close in age and spent a lot of time together. And while they shared a lot, the two also had their own interests. Danielle loved performing and was in both theater and show choir, while Stacey preferred sports like tennis, cheer, and pom. Stacey was disciplined and goal-oriented, waking up at 4 a.m. on most days to go out for a run before the day started. In 1991, Stacey was heartbroken to watch her big sister leave for school at Ohio State University, following in the footsteps of their father and uncle. But Stacey knew she'd be there soon. Stacey spent 1 year at nearby Lakeland Community College after graduating from high school, then joined her big sister at Ohio State. The two sisters were excited to be back together and always made time for each other. Danielle told Dateline, "We would have coffee together. We would either have Highlander grog or the Nutty Irishman coffee at one of the coffee shops on campus. I was really glad when she came to college." After settling in, Stacey rushed to the Alpha Delta Pi sorority. One of her sorority sisters, Ashley, told Dateline about how she and Stacey gravitated towards each other. "She joined about a month after I did, and since we're both kind of, newer, we hung out. She lived in the sorority house for 2 years, as did I, so we lived on the same floor for several years. She always had a big, beautiful smile. She was always happy, a go-getter." Another sorority sister, Paula, knew that her and Stacey were meant to be friends from the moment they met at a fraternity party. "She was adorable. She liked to dance, and I liked to dance. We both loved cheesy 80s music. Though Stacey had a very active social life, she still dedicated time to school. She majored in marketing at OSU and was constantly impressing her friends and family with her achievements. Paula told Dateline she was just a little powerhouse. She landed a killer internship when the Olympics were in Atlanta in 1996. She got this internship with McDonald's, and that was huge. And then right after she graduated from college, she got this job as a marketing assistant. After Stacey's murder, Ashley and Paula created a Facebook page for their friend where people who knew her could share their favorite memories. When asked on the page to describe Stacey, they wrote, "Stacey was a soul so vibrant, so full of life, that it's still hard to accept she's gone. Stacey was the kind of person who could turn any moment into a celebration. She loved dancing to any kind of music, whether it was the Molly dance from the Breakfast Club or a wild twist. She'd be the first one on her feet, moving with a joy that was absolutely contagious. It didn't matter if the beat was fast or slow. Stacey danced like the world was her stage, and we were all lucky enough to have front row seats. She had this incredible gift. Every word to every song from the 50s and 60s was etched in her heart. You'd catch her singing along to Van Morrison, Buddy Holly, or the Supremes, never missing a lyric. Her voice carrying that perfect mix of nostalgia and happiness. And she adored Doris Day. Stacey would watch Doris's movies for hours, singing her songs, caught up in that sunny smile. There was something about Doris that just lit Stacey up, like they were kindred spirits across time. We will never forget who she was. A whirlwind of song, dance, and sweetness, wrapped in a laugh that could melt the hardest heart." Others on the Facebook page tell stories of how much Stacey loved going out on the weekends with friends. Quote, "Stacey was the happiest when she was out with her girlfriends under strobe lights with all the best 80s music blaring." An old friend, Katie, posted about how reflecting on the wonderful memories she had with Stacey made things a bit easier. The time spent trying to study in the S&E library with Stacey and Alicia, but Stacey and I kept whispering and drawing goofy pictures instead of being productive. I also remember several of us crowding onto the bunk beds in her room in the sorority house and watching movies on a tiny TV, and then probably sneaking out onto the porch roof at some point in time just because we weren't supposed to do it. Finally, there was a nerve-wracking but great time that we had watching the 1997 Rose Bowl and picking up tons of pizza at halftime to bring back to a gathering at a friend's house. No one wanted to go get the pizzas, but Stacey happily agreed to do it with me. We joked that we would throw the TV out the window if OSU lost, but thankfully, that didn't happen. It was one of many great days I spent with her. Another sorority sister, Julia, reminisced on how kind Stacey was, that she cared so much about the people in her life. Julia wrote, "There are so many things I remember about Stacey, mostly her big smile. You know, the one that could cheer you up any time. I remember during finals one quarter while we were living in the sorority house, Stacey was so stressed about finals. She had her hair all crazy, sweatpants, and about 3 shirts. When I walked in the room, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. As soon as she saw me, though, she smiled and started asking tons of questions. How were finals? How many more did I have? Were my classes hard? Was I studying a lot? I think I remember most how she always had time for people and how she always made you feel important. We need more people like that."
Friends had no shortage of memories of Stacey, laughing, dancing, smiling, and overall just being a wonderful person. By spring of 1998, Stacey had graduated with her degree in marketing and had been at her job with American Electric Power for about 6 months. She was renting an apartment in Columbus with her black and white cat boots. Danielle told Dateline that her sister was thriving, saying, "Everything was good in her life."
On Monday, March 23rd, 1998, Danielle called Stacey, eager to discuss the Academy Awards that had just aired. Danielle told Dateline, "The last movie we saw together was Titanic. We disagreed about what the meaning behind the ending was. I was calling, leaving a bunch of Oscar-related messages on the voicemail. Stacey, Danielle, and their mother had all seen the movie and couldn't agree on the meaning of the staircase scene at the movie's ending. One thing that Stacey was sure of, though, was that the movie's theme song, My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion, was her new favorite song." That year, Titanic was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, and Danielle couldn't wait to discuss everything that had happened on the award show with Stacey. Unfortunately, Stacey didn't answer the phone. Danielle assumed that her younger sister was traveling for work and just waited for her to return her messages, but she never did. The following day, Danielle had a voicemail waiting for her, which she hoped was from Stacey. However, it was from Stacey's employer. They said that Stacey hadn't been to work in several days and they were unable to get in contact with her. Danielle later told NBC News, "I just could not fathom any possibility where she wouldn't show up for work. She was probably one of the hardest working people I've ever met." Danielle panicked, called her parents, and told them about the voicemail. She told them that she was heading over to Stacey's apartment in the 1200 block of Waterford Drive in the Knowles West neighborhood. When she arrived, she found Stacey's car parked outside and her apartment door unlocked. Inside, her purse, money, and all her credit cards were still there, but Stacey wasn't. Danielle later told NBC4 that the scene was really strange. Quote, "I noticed the refrigerator door was wide open and that there's a pizza box on the island. There's milk on the island, some cabinets are open, the TV was off. It was just, what the heck happened here? Something terrible happened here." There was also a box of mostly uneaten breadsticks on the kitchen counter with a receipt nearby dated March 21st, 1998, 5:58 p.m. Danielle also noticed that Stacey's kitten Boots was missing. Danielle immediately knew that something was wrong and called 911.
It was now Tuesday, March 24th, and Stacey's employer told Danielle that she hadn't been at work Monday or Tuesday. She'd last been at work on Friday the 20th. When she didn't come into work on Monday, her coworkers, like Danielle, assumed she'd left for her business trip.
The Columbus Police Department responded immediately to 23-year-old Stacey's apartment. Despite some cases where law enforcement's response to a reported missing person seems lackluster, CPD was quick to start their investigation. Danielle told Dateline how those first few hours went. "They went through her apartment. They asked me all sorts of questions. And then, like a couple of hours later, teams from rape and homicide came. Even though I know that it takes 24 hours for them to take action, I feel like they took action on the initial reporting." The Delaware County Sheriff's Office, who Stacey's case was eventually transferred to, were also thankful for the CPD's quick response and thoroughness of the initial investigation. Delaware County Sergeant Jeff Bessinger told Dateline they did a great job of preserving evidence, handling it correctly from the get-go. Right off the bat, they handled this like a crime scene. Detectives noticed the receipt with the pizza box and breadsticks dated for the evening of the 21st, which would have been Saturday. Officials quickly tracked down the pizza place, which connected them to the delivery driver. According to Sergeant Bessinger, law enforcement believed that he was one of the last people to see Stacey before she disappeared. Quote, "He doesn't report seeing anything weird. He doesn't report seeing anyone with her. He was just a young kid delivering pizzas." An article published by The Lantern, an independent student newspaper at Ohio State, reports different information. Quote, "Police started by questioning Stacey's neighbor and the pizza delivery driver who might have heard or seen anything amiss. When he dropped off the breadsticks that evening, the pizza driver felt very strongly that she was not alone in her apartment and sensed somebody else was present," he told police, end quote. The pizza delivery driver has never been officially named and, in no reports, provided any information that would concretely indicate that someone else was in the apartment with Stacey that night. It's definitely hard not to note how much this article differs from the official reports. We can't say here at the Murder Diaries why it's so different and what is actually correct in terms of this delivery driver believing there was somebody with her or not. But if the official reports aren't giving any indication that he believed somebody was with her, that's probably what we have to go with in terms of this case for this episode. Again, not sure why or what to do with that article and why the article was claiming that he did. That night, Danielle sat with officers late into the early morning hours until 3 a.m. as they asked her question after question, looking for any clue that might indicate where Stacey was. Unfortunately, she had no answers. More than 72 hours had passed since the pizza had been delivered to Stacey's house, since anyone had confirmed contact with her. Danielle knew that this made things much more complicated, telling The Lantern, "If you're not finding things within 24 hours, there is less and less of a chance of it being resolved." There were no signs of burglary in the apartment, and it didn't seem like any of Stacey's belongings were missing. There was even $40 and several uncashed checks still in her purse, seemingly untouched. The only thing that was still missing was Boots the cat, whom Stacey had adopted just 3 months earlier. Stacey was an animal lover, and those that knew her knew that there was no way she'd just abandon him. Detectives continued to look through Stacey's apartment. Others went to question her neighbors in the apartment complex. They found two of her neighbors who lived in the apartment directly above Stacey, who recalled hearing something concerning. The neighbors said that around 4 a.m., early Sunday morning, they were woken up by horrible screams coming from the apartment below. The screams continued along with loud banging. The neighbor told police that he couldn't fall back asleep and that the noises sounded like, quote, someone was in trouble. Around 2 p.m. that afternoon, the neighbors went downstairs to knock on Stacey's door and check on her. There was no answer, and Boots the cat was standing outside of her apartment door. Throughout the investigation, the public has raised many questions as to why the upstairs neighbor didn't call 911 when they heard screams coming from Stacey's apartment. Several Reddit pages on Stacey's case have comments saying this male neighbor had several unpaid parking tickets, so he was worried about meeting with the police. This hasn't been confirmed by any official sources and definitely not by this podcast, but it's definitely an interesting insight as to why maybe he was trying to avoid talking to the police. A Reddit user that has since been verified as an insider on Stacey's case reported that the male neighbor died in 2021 and that his girlfriend was at his apartment that night, which made him low on the suspects list for detectives.
Nobody believed that Stacey left on her own. Like her sister told multiple news sources, Stacey was excited about her new job and loved her life. She wouldn't have just left, and especially wouldn't have left Boots outside. Danielle told Dateline that the idea of someone hurting her sister was so difficult to even consider, saying, I don't know anyone who didn't care about her. I can't think of anyone who would have wanted to hurt her. She was a light. When Paige and I launched the Murder Diaries, we quickly realized it was so much more than just hitting record. Suddenly, we were juggling everything: branding, editing, scheduling, promoting. It was a lot to take on, and honestly, it felt like we were building a business with no map. That's why having a partner like Shopify can make all the difference. It's the go-to platform for millions of entrepreneurs because it brings everything: selling, shipping, marketing into one place. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Skims and Rode to brands just getting started. And you too can get started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style, which we know is super important. You can also accelerate your content creation because Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that will write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. You can also get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you because Shopify helps you create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or even strolling. And probably best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/murderdiaries. Go to shopify.com/murderdiaries. Shopify.com/murderdiaries.
Stacey's friends and family immediately began spreading the word about her disappearance, doing everything they could think of to get her face and name out to the public. Her sorority sister Paula told Dateline that they weren't even worried about a possible lingering threat from someone who might have attacked Stacey. They were just so fixated on finding her. We were so fixated on finding her and hoping that she would be located that there wasn't a lot of time to think of personal safety. A vigil was organized on the campus of Ohio State with over 5,000 people in attendance. Stacey's sorority sisters worked with her family to create flyers with Stacey's photo, her name, description, and where she was last seen. Another student at OSU and photographer for the school's newspaper said that many people at the vigil were in shock. He told the Lantern, everybody was sort of taken aback by that. You don't think about that kind of thing happening. And when it did, it was pretty surprising. It was just a sobering reminder of the evil and the harsh realities that are out there in the world when you're just starting to learn about the world while you're in college. At the end of the vigil, Danielle recalled feeling a twinge of something that kept her going. A News Channel 4 reporter shared a story about another girl who'd recently gone missing, but had escaped alive. Danielle told the Lantern that after hearing that story, quote, having that little light of hope was something that I desperately needed. Stacey's employer, American Electric Power, was printing thousands of flyers out for distribution every day. They even held on to Stacey's job for several months after her disappearance, everyone hoping that she'd return and jump right back into the job she loved so much. As law enforcement continued their investigation, Danielle started asking questions of her own. She found Stacey's phone book and began calling every number in it, asking if they had any idea where Stacey was or what might have happened to her. She told NBC4, "I was panicking. I had no idea where she was, and I was imagining, obviously, the worst. Even at that point, still hoping for the best, but imagining the worst." Danielle said that everyone she called was very sympathetic and willing to answer any questions she had about Stacey, except for one individual. He refused to take her call. She tried reaching him several times, but his roommate would answer and ask her why she was, quote, bothering him. This man, whose name has never been officially released, was friends with Stacey. We'll refer to him as Joe. Joe had recently helped Stacey move across town into her new apartment and seemed like a good friend to her. Danielle believed that Joe was interested in her sister romantically, but that she didn't feel the same way. This made his unwillingness to talk to her even more concerning and suspicious. Danielle explained to NBC4, "I just thought for somebody who was willing to go across the city and help her move to not even say, oh, I haven't seen her. Nothing like that. It made absolutely no sense to me. All the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I just thought that was a really weird reaction to have." Danielle immediately passed this information on to investigators. Investigators informed her every time that they had a tip or lead or any new information, but as years passed, all those tips began to dry up and Stacey's case grew colder. Danielle still held on to some hope that her little sister would return home, but as time continued to pass, it became harder. She told Dateline, "I waited for that call. Like, is she going to be alive? Is she dead?"
Like most people who have a loved one go missing, the not knowing and the what ifs become the hardest things to face. Danielle told the Lantern, "It just kills from the inside out. You pray for their safe return. You want them to come back."
Then, on November 27th, 2004, 6.5 long years after Stacey disappeared, Danielle saw a news report that a man looking for his lost dog in a woodline near the Scioto River on State Route 257 in Delaware County had stumbled upon human remains. Initial reports said that the remains belonged to a woman in her 40s. However, something about the situation gave Danielle a funny feeling. She later recalled that feeling to Dateline, saying, "A body had been found in the area, although they thought it was older. I really got a bad feeling when I heard it announced on the radio." Danielle's strange feeling was right. Shortly after the remains were discovered, she got a phone call while at work. Authorities told her that tests confirmed the remains belonged to Stacey. Because the remains were found in Delaware County, not in Franklin County where Stacey lived, her case was transferred to the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant Bessinger with the Sheriff's Office told the Lantern, "All of a sudden, we have a victim of a homicide in our county that we knew nothing about, so we're already behind the 8 ball to say, because we've lost 6 years where we're not involved." Unfortunately, this was not an uncommon situation for Delaware County. Sergeant Bessinger said, "Delaware County a lot of times turns out to be what we refer to as a dumping ground for bodies. We find ourselves dealing with the aftermath of bodies from other agencies." The location of the remains was about 40 minutes away from Stacey's apartment. Unfortunately, due to the state of decomposition, the coroner was unable to determine a cause of death. By the time they were discovered, the remains consisted of just bones. Sergeant Bessinger told Dateline, "I got involved with it early on as a deputy, as far as being on the scene. Several years later, when I made detective, I was assigned to the cold case unit, and Stacey's case was one of them." When the sheriff's office took over the case, Sergeant Bessinger said that they completely reinvestigated everything. Quote, "There were some things that were found later on in the search by the Columbus Police Department. We do have it in our possession at this point, and that's still being examined by the crime lab. Every year on, the DNA technology gets better." The sergeant also told the Lantern that he couldn't go into detail about the evidence found at Stacey's apartment. Though the department did everything they could to breathe new life into the case, they continued to hit the same barriers that the Columbus police did. Very little physical evidence on scene, people refusing to speak with police, and not enough information to compel people to speak with them. Quote, "With cold cases, they're cold for a reason. It's not for a lack of effort from the investigators for trying."
Unofficial reports on different social media pages said that DNA was found at Stacey's apartment, but it was only found to belong to her. Another said that a large piece of carpet was removed from Stacey's apartment by police, and that a strong smell of bleach was noted when they arrived. While detectives haven't confirmed this, they continue to say that there was very little physical evidence found on scene.
Paula and Ashley, Stacey's sorority sisters, have not let the time that's passed slow down their search for answers. Their sorority motto is, "We live for each other," and the two women continue to do that for Stacey. Paula told WBNS 10, "We didn't take this lightly, and so that's what we're doing right now. We're living for her, and we're going to keep the promise we made when she joined the house." Along with the help of other 80 Pie sisters, Danielle, Paula, and Ashley created a social media campaign and Facebook page called Finishing Stacey's Fight. Paula explained their purpose. "We are hoping to exploit the way that the internet shares information, the way that it spreads. We are absolutely convinced that there is someone who knows what happened to Stacey who's been hiding for 25 years. In fact, those who loved Stacey seem convinced that they know who killed her. They even write posts aimed directly at him and those who know him on the Finishing Stacey's Fight Facebook page." Here's one of those posts. "Sociopath. Those close to Stacey's case often use this term to describe the person of interest. How has he eluded police for so long? He surrounds himself with compassionate people that just can't bring themselves to accept what they know. Deep down is true. He's woefully flawed and is a danger to himself and society." Maybe they reason that he's not a sociopath because he's able to maintain long-term relationships. But are these really healthy two-way relationships? You know who you are. You've been very upset recently, concerned about the future for those who are vulnerable. You worry about the future on their behalf. How can you, in good conscience, let this man continue to be free to hurt women in the most unspeakable ways? If you truly believe in the values you discuss on social media, it's time to play your role in keeping the world safe for women. He's a sociopath. You know it's true. It's time for you to step up and get him behind bars. It is possible that they're referring to Joe, the man who refused to take Danielle's phone call after Stacey went missing. A post on Reddit from the Stacey Colbert page is directed specifically at people who might have known Joe. Here's a post from that page. "Were you at Ohio State between 93 through 97? Did you have an unsettling encounter with a creepy lurker that hung around the outskirts of rooms exhibiting stalker behavior in your classes, dorms, or fraternity house?" The post goes on to say that police believe Stacey knew her attacker and that she may have willingly let him into her apartment. It then describes the man as having helped Stacey and Danielle move Stacey into her new apartment, the one she disappeared from. The post alleges that 2 months before Stacey's disappearance, she told a friend that this man, quote, aggressively confronted her, asking her why she hadn't had sex with him. This had reportedly, and rightfully so, upset Stacey and made her want to stop seeing him. The post seems to be describing the same man that Danielle described to news outlets, who were calling Joe. But remember, Joe's never been publicly named, nor is this post naming him, so it's hard to be sure. It goes on to say that after Stacey's disappearance and before anything was made public about it, the man refused to answer Danielle's calls and that his roommate told her to stop bothering him. Much like the man that we referenced earlier, this is why we think it might be Joe. It should also be noted that this man did not seem to have signed up on any of the volunteer sign-up sheets in Stacey's sorority house, so it's assumed that he didn't help with any of the searches. Sergeant Bessinger seems to feel similarly to Danielle and her friends, that he very likely knows who may have killed Stacey. He told NBC News, "I need to be able to convince 12 people that this person did it, but I need more to charge them. That's the hardest part, is knowing somebody is responsible and not being able to do anything about it." Despite the roadblocks that he continues to hit with Stacey's case, Sergeant Bessinger is persistent. He has said that he has answers for Stacey and that he won't let this go. Quote, "I'm going to get him. I promise you. I'm going to get him. He's a monster, and this isn't something you do once." Unfortunately, Stacey's father, Larry, died in 2007 and won't get to see his daughter get justice. Her mother, Rana, lives in Arizona, and understandably, she may never get closure. She told The Lantern, "The hardest thing as a parent is when someone says, 'How many children do you have?' And to say, 'I had 2. You're always waiting for that shoe to drop and your life to go back to what it was. The physical pain is gone, but the sorrow and grief is never gone." Danielle echoes her mother's grief and how hard it is, no matter how much time passes. Someone who is part of your life day in and day out, a part of your being, a part of what you know, when they disappear, it's hard. You still want to make that call to them. It doesn't get any easier. You think after all these years, you're just used to living with the pain, but you don't. You can't get used to it. Boots, Stacey's kitten, was found, though we don't know the exact story of that. However, what we do know was that he was adopted by one of her sorority sisters. Boots had been the name assigned to him at the shelter, and Stacey had been deciding on another name when she disappeared. Another sister suggested Cookie, as it was one of Stacey's nicknames. The vote was unanimous, and Boots became Cookie, who was described by his new owner as abnormally social and cuddly, but also mischievous. He lived out his life with his new family and a new cat sister named Monet. Cookie lived to be 19 years old and was, quote, a good boy his whole life. One of the most recent posts on finishing Stacey's fight describes her last day. On March 21st, 1998, Stacey had every reason to believe that this was just a normal Saturday. She is known to have spoken with a female coworker who lived in her apartment complex. It is believed they were mending fences from the night before. She spoke on the phone with her lifelong best friend who had just returned from a miserable spring break trip. She knew she could count on Stacey to listen and be there for her. She chatted with her dad on the phone. This was something they did every week. He died in 2007 without justice being served for his precious daughter. It's not too late to honor his memory by coming forward with the information needed to get the monster responsible for this off the streets. It's time to break your silence. If you have any information about the murder of 23-year-old Stacey Beth Colbert, please contact the Delaware County Sheriff's Department at 740-833-2830 or email tips to finishingstacey'sfight@gmail.com.
That's it for today's coverage, but be sure to join our Patreon if you would like to listen to cases like this one or our unscripted series ad-free. You can also find us on social media at The Murder Diaries Pod. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. See you next week. And until then,
Stay safe.
bye.
Bye.